And you may have to press a button to accept to stay on.
We're good to go.
All right. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. I already made a comment earlier before we started the recording, but I appreciate you spending time with us versus potentially the vice presidential debates. Hopefully we'll be as entertaining as that might have been otherwise.
I don't know.
but hopefully if you wanted to see that, you're recording that. And we will make a recording of this for anybody who wasn't able to stay on the full time, or if you know others that might get some value out of the presentation tonight. We'll be sending out the link to everybody who registered today. So view it at your pleasure or send it out to others who might get some value out of it. But just real quick before we jump into the material from Vanessa, I usually start these happy hours with just a general market overview. I'm gonna keep that pretty quick tonight. You know, we do send out weekly videos and all of that. Today's been obviously an interesting week with President Trump going in and out of the hospital with COVID, and then talking about suspending any further conversations on stimulus talks, only to by that evening backtrack all of that. And so anything we lost in the market yesterday was made up for today. So, you know, it's essentially a long story short, you know, we've got elections now less than a month away. We've got stimulus talks going on that, you know, I wonder right now whether there's a lot of incentive on the Democrat side to get much of a deal done, knowing that, you know, probably a negative stock market performance between now and then probably doesn't help Trump out at all. So it's going to be interesting to see the politics played, which only leads into more of our expectation that we're likely to see some continued volatility. And that's really how we're positioning things and thinking about things right now. So that's really the general theme, and definitely we just sent out our blog post and video yesterday. You should have got the newsletter today. At least most of you should have got the newsletter today. So if you have any questions on that, if you want to pop in before we jump into the Medicare, feel free, but I'm not going to really go through any charts or any of that today, because you have most of that on the website and available anytime you want. So, but if you got any immediate questions or things around the markets or that, we can jump in before I turn it over to Vanessa. All right, good. So
And nothing.
And I'll be around at the end too. I'll wait around. I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions on the Medicare side of things, but I'll be around in case anything pops up related to the economy or market. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa Voss. So like I mentioned before we started the recording as well, Melissa, the new member of Konvergent, has been working with Vanessa for years on the insurance side, and introduced her to our team with her Medicare and insurance specialty background. And we were excited to have somebody really close and local to the office here in Gig Harbor, but she's also able to work with clients really wherever they are. You know, everything today is kind of virtual anyway. So she's an expert in this field. She's already done some work for a few of my clients and has done an outstanding and very detailed job. So excited to introduce her all to you. And so any questions you might have around Medicare following up from this, I'm sure Vanessa will be happy to work with you and help you through whatever Medicare enrollments and all of that for this year. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Vanessa. She's gonna give you an update on the exciting world of Medicare planning.
Not so, but hey, I'll do my best. Thank you, Homer. Thank you guys for having me. My big goal today is hopefully to simplify the chaos of Medicare. I know there's a lot going on every year. A lot of folks have a lot of questions. So just bear with me. I know we have a lot of people on the call today. Some are new to Medicare. Some have been on Medicare for quite some time. Hopefully I can give information that gives you guys just general updates depending on where you are in your Medicare process. Okay, so bear with me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. All right, can you guys see that okay?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna skip over, of course, this primary page here. There we go. All right, so I have 4 main objectives I would like to cover and for you guys to take away from. One, I'm just gonna review the basics of Medicare. I feel like the foundation of, I think, a lot of the confusion is not understanding how Medicare works and the different parts of Medicare. So I'm going to go over that today. How to analyze and choose your coverage, especially if you're new to Medicare, how Medicare works, because a lot of the parts with Medicare don't necessarily go in order, which again causes a lot of confusion. with the COVID-19 and the big open enrollment, I also am going to review what that looks like, things to anticipate going into next year, beginning January, and how COVID-19 has really impacted the healthcare system entirely. So lastly, I'm going to go over resources and open it up for question and answer forum. I think that that's going to be probably the heart of where we're going to spend most of our time on. So the basics of Medicare here. So a lot of folks have been on Medicare, as I said. So Medicare is a government health insurance program for people 65 and older, or those on early disability are often placed on early Medicare if they're not able to work or have disabling conditions. The different parts of Medicare, there's a lot of different parts, a lot of different letters, and they don't necessarily go in order. You are also charged for certain parts of Medicare and charged more based on your income very often. Now, most folks do enroll in Medicare at the age of 65 or when they lose their credible coverage. Often this occurs at either their retirement or a spouse's retirement. So the big question is, once you decide you want to enroll in Medicare or you lose coverage, or even if you decide at 65 to enroll in Medicare, this is the step-by-step process and how that works. Essentially, most people do receive Part A, which is your hospital, automatically at 65. This is from the Medicare tax you've paid into. That should be automatic. Now, if you have not began drawing Social Security income prior to the age of 65, you're going to want to enroll in Part B of Medicare, and you can do that a few different ways. Your enrollment happens through Social Security's website, not Medicare, and I know that often causes confusion. So you're going to actually, if you decide to enroll online via website, you're going to go to ssa.gov. So I just want to stop there because there's a lot of Social Security fake websites out there. So just make sure when you do visit that site, if you're a new enrollee, to watch out for the Medicare or the Social Security symbol. Right now, the website also has a big COVID-19 image on it. So that's a good way to tell that you're actually on the government website. Now, if you, for some reason, are not able to enroll online due to security reasons, you'll want to call Social Security. So one thing to keep in mind with how the virus is impacting the government, that most of the workers are working remotely. So if you do end up calling, I would suggest calling right in the morning, because it takes on average 45 to about 90 minutes of a hold time just to get through to somebody. So keep that in mind. It is a very long wait. So a lot of my clients are getting really frustrated with just the process of enrolling in general. You can also mail in the Part B enrollment form, which can be found on Social Security's website as well. Now, after you enroll and you receive your Medicare card, that is when you can elect a secondary coverage, which I will review in detail a little bit here in the next few slides.
Okay, real quick,
Sorry
to interrupt
okay,
you. If any of you have questions as you're going through, probably easiest, and Leah will be monitoring this, is just throw it in the chat, and Leah will feel free to unmute and ask as well. But if it's easier for you just to type, go ahead and just throw the questions in the chat as we go, and Leah will chime in to ask those of Vanessa to make sure you get your question asked.
You got it. So it doesn't have to be so formal, so feel free to interrupt me as I go along in the process if you do have questions. Finally, the last aspect of enrolling, I would say the government is going to assume if you don't enroll in Medicare at the age of 65 that they're going to assess a penalty. So let's say your spouse is retiring and you are 67 and you have not enrolled in Part B. You're going to want to document and provide documentation that you've had credible coverage so that the government knows not to assess late enrollment penalties. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Personally, I would be proactive on that. Sometimes it's slow turnaround process if you get the information to them a tad late. Okay. Moving on. So I want to take a minute to review what Medicare costs. So your Part A, your hospital coverage of Medicare, is not necessarily free. They call it premium free. So as long as you have paid in 40 quarters, yourself or your spouse, you will not be charged an additional monthly premium. Now, if that situation does not apply to you and you do have to pay for Part A of Medicare, it is roughly $450 a month. Most, I would say 99% of folks are entitled to the premium-free Part A of Medicare. Now, your Part B for 2020 is on average $144.60 unless you have a high or low income. And I'm going to review what the high income adjustment is going to be. They also call that IRMA. I'm going to review that on the next few slides. So we'll spend just a few minutes here. So depending on what your 2018 income was and how you filed, because that is the most recent information provided from the IRS to Social Security, this is what you are charged based on your level of income. Now, please keep in mind that depending on how you set up your secondary coverage, you'll be charged more for Part B. And then when you enroll in Part D, which is the prescription coverage, you're also going to be charged a higher plan premium. So I'm going to just take a minute to figure out if any of those apply. Now, one thing to keep in mind that if your income does happen to drop when you're eligible for Medicare and you can fall under that limitation, you can submit forms to Medicare having that reduced. So if that applies to you and you need some help on where to find those forms, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. This is one of the hardest parts to understand, I feel, when it comes to Medicare. Again, I can't stress that a lot of the letters don't go in order, and I feel it's human nature to want to put them in order. So hence why this is so confusing. I'm going to start just kind of describing this diagram here on the left. So your Part A is your hospital and your Part B is your medical coverage. A lot of people assume it's an 80-20 split on medical, but you also have Part A hospital copays if you do end up in the hospital. We call Part A and B original Medicare. So if you decide to keep original Medicare, when you go to the doctor or admitted to the hospital, they're always going to bill Medicare first. So that is your primary coverage, original Medicare. Most individuals then choose a Part D. D is somewhat easy to remember because D for drug, that means your prescription coverage. And then you would choose then an optional Medigap policy. So again, Medigap, if you think of Medigap as filling the gaps to A and B, it's somewhat easy to remember. Now, the alternative to doing that route right there would be a Part C. So the Part C, also called Medicare Advantage programs, it essentially rolls everything all into one. So it will combine the hospital, the doctor, and often the prescription coverage. Now with Part C, you also will receive some additional benefits such as vision and dental. When the gyms were open, gym benefits. Right now, a lot of the plans are sending out fitness boxes, so that helps from home. Now the Part C, the Part D, and the Medigap are all offered by private insurance companies. I'm going to switch over now to the diagram to the right, hence the confusing part. The supplement Medigap plans are also lettered. Okay, so does it make it easy? So it is possible to be on A and B, have a plan N like Nancy, and then have a Part D. Okay, so that's a lot of where the confusion comes from. This slide talks about what Medicare does not cover. Again, I can't stress enough why you would elect a secondary coverage of some kind, whether it be a Medicare Advantage, a Part C, or a supplement, because there are a lot of things Medicare does not pay for, and such as the dental coverage, vision, cosmetic surgery, home care and long-term care, alternative medicine, care for travel outside the US, modifying your home in the event that you do need, let's say a shower or some kind of other modifications that is not paid for, hearing aids, and prescription Part D. So one thing I wanted to stress on this slide, specifically is Medicare does pay for cataract surgery. So one thing we've run into quite a few times in the past, I would say 6 months with clients, is their doctor's recommending for them to have cataract surgery. When they go to the appointment, they are signing waivers to have additional services built into that surgery, and then they're being billed as cosmetic. So please keep in mind that Medicare has to deem it medically necessary, and since they don't cover cosmetic surgery, it's really important to be careful and communicate what is covered by your insurance company, because if you do end up cataracts and the facility bills it as cosmetic, you'll be responsible for the entire cost. Just one example of some issues that we've run into lately. Your prescription coverage, your Part D, again, offered by private insurance companies. You can sign up for a prescription Part D program one of two ways. You can do a standalone prescription coverage, which has a monthly premium, annual deductibles in most situations, co-insurance and coverage gaps, or you can opt for a Medicare Advantage program, which has it included in your premium. So you won't pay a separate premium, it's included. And again, those also have deductibles, co-insurance, and coverage gaps. So this is a really important aspect of doing your overall health insurance and Medicare planning, because you could opt for a supplement that might give you close to full coverage, but there's nothing really that's going to help with the big deductibles and the coverage gaps when it comes to your prescription coverage. So if any of you out there have heard of a coverage gap, also known as the donut hole, we hear that term a lot, and probably from folks, if you know friends or family that are really sick, you're going to run into this often depending on your level of medication. So again, I can't stress enough to make sure that you get a free cost and coverage review, do research to make sure that you're saving as much money as you can on prescription coverage.
Hey, Vanessa, real quick question
Yes.
on that. My understanding that is that from plan to plan or from provider to provider, the specific prescription coverage could be significantly different. And then on top of that, even worse is they could change every year. And so re-enrolling and just re-signing up with your same plan, you could potentially be losing coverage you thought you had. Is that accurate?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I was going to cover that. You just beat me to it, which is totally okay. You're exactly right. Just to give you an example there, we see a lot of medication commercials on TV. A lot of them are very expensive. So just to give you a general understanding, so Lyrica, which is often taken for pain. Lyrica, if you fill it at one pharmacy, could be $20, where if you go to a different pharmacy, it could be $150. So, and if you're not doing that checkup, each year those prescription plans, they move those medications to certain tier levels. So if they happen to move a medication that might be, let's say, tier 1, that might cost you $23, if they happen to bump it up a couple levels, you will end up paying significantly more. So yes, I would 100% always do a checkup for the prescriptions, no matter what, even if you're happy with your health insurance, just because that very reason. And most people honestly don't read your summary of benefits or their cost and coverage reviews until it's too late, and there's really nothing they can do about it if they wait too long. Great question. So here is essentially how the coverage gap works, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because it can get very, very confusing. Just a couple little tips I'm going to give you after I review how that works. So all the coverages begin January 1st. So regardless if you're paying a separate monthly premium or it's built into your plan, you're going to begin January 1 is when everything resets. Now, your initial deductible is what you're going to pay into if you have a plan with a deductible. Moving on, you're then going to hit initial coverage. So this essentially is going to be your cost sharing. Depending on how expensive that medication is, you're going to share a portion of that cost until you hit a certain limit. Now, once you're in your coverage gap, where the whole of the donut is, you essentially have no prescription coverage. You're paying the bulk of the cost. However, some plans do give you a 50% discount. So I would be very careful with expensive medications, because if your medication is $800, well, even with a 50% discount, you're still paying $400. Now, once you've met the limit, they're then going to give you a little bit of a break for spending so much money, essentially, and that's called the catastrophic coverage. Again, there's no additional insurance that anyone out there can protect you against the coverage gap. We were hoping years ago that the gaps would be decreased and be a little bit smaller. We have yet to see any relief for that. So just a couple tips that might help you with that is to consider generic alternatives. Although I'm not making any recommendations that you should always take generic alternatives, because it really just depends on how your body responds. I would definitely communicate with your doctor to see what alternatives you have if the medication he's prescribing is really high-end and brand name. Okay? Now, please keep in mind the doctor's job is to make you better, not necessarily save you money. So they're going to prescribe things that may or may not cost a whole lot, because they're not double checking that information for you. Furthermore, I would also know what plan and what pharmacy is preferred, because as Homer and I were communicating, the different pharmacies have different partnerships, and you'll save a lot of money going to one that the plan deems as preferred. Furthermore, if you are taking generics, or you can change some of those medications to generic, most of the time you're going to save money doing a mail order. Now, that is a personal preference. I do have some clients that just do not want to deal with mail order, but if you're taking generics, they're often free in a lot of the plans. Now, their growing popularity are the prescription savings cards, such as GoodRx. You guys have probably heard of that. So that's a really big one. Now, you can use those. However, just recently I had a client run into an issue to where they wanted to use the GoodRx app at a local pharmacy, but the pharmacy told them they couldn't because they had their insurance information on file. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but that's just something to be aware of to help save you money. So a lot of the pharmacists right now will understand that people are trying to get around the donut hole and to save as much money as possible. Cash is always a good option if that's feasible for you. If you have any questions on that, I know it gets somewhat confusing, but I just wanted to be sure I went through that. No? Okay. So this, I would say, understanding how the coverage works and what options you have is challenging parts to kind of understand. So once you are enrolled in A and B, so A, your hospital, B is your medical, you essentially have two different ways to elect your secondary coverage. So I'm just going to review each option. Your option one would be to have Medicare A and B your primary coverage, and enroll in a Medigap supplement or cost plan, which helps pay for the deductibles and the copays. Now, you, of course, have to be enrolled in A and B, and these are offered by private insurance companies. So most of these plans are standardized. By that, I mean a plan with Humana is the same exact plan as United Healthcare. The companies set their own rates, and depending on the state that you are in, you could be charged more for different genders, smoker, non-smoker rate, so please keep that in mind. And then you would elect a prescription drug program, again, offered by a private insurance company. So that is just one option. Now, if you choose option one, you are still, of course, paying for Part B. All of your premiums are essentially broken up and itemized. So you'd pay for Part B, a separate premium for the Medigap plan, and then a separate premium for the Part D prescription coverage. The alternative to that would be to opt for option two, which again, you're still paying for Part B, but you now have one company that essentially dictates your copays and your deductibles. Most of the health and the prescriptions, they're bundled into one premium. Usually they cost a little bit lower than Medigap plans, which I'll review here in a few minutes. So what is the big difference between a Medicare supplement and a Medicare Advantage program? Essentially, there's no right or wrong choice to make. It's a little bit like comparing an apple to an orange, or if you like a Ford versus a Chevy, okay? It's not, the government doesn't necessarily care which plan you pick. I would really just cater it to your personal needs based on a couple different factors. Now, the big difference is, I'm going to go over the rest of the differences here after I kind of go through the chart. So the doctors and the hospitals under a Medicare supplement, as long as they accept Medicare assignment, which ultimately says, yes, I will bill Medicare first, you have no networks as long as the doctor, the specialist has agreed to accept Medicare. Under Medicare Advantage programs, you typically have a network of doctors and in-network and out-of-network costs. Furthermore, under the Medicare Advantage, oftentimes you need a referral. Because Medicare is billed as a primary insurance, you don't need a referral when you opt for a Medigap or a supplemental plan. I just reviewed networks, got a little ahead of myself. As far as enrolling, you can buy a Medicare, a Medigap policy, or a supplement anytime you turn 65 and join Part B of Medicare. So a lot of brokers and a lot of agents don't communicate that you can essentially buy a Medigap policy anytime throughout the year as long as you can qualify health-wise. Okay, Medigap policies do not necessarily abide by Medicare's open enrollment season. So let's say, for an example, you have a Medigap with Humana, but you want to switch to United Healthcare, the same policy, you can do that at any time throughout the year. Now, Medicare Advantage programs, after your initial enrollment, you generally have to wait till Medicare's open enrollment time unless you fall within a special circumstance. Now, there are pages and pages of special circumstances that apply. If you do have a question, whether or not you fall within one, you can always email me and ask. Some of the information you can also find on special enrollments on Medicare's website as well. So as far as costs go, Medicare supplements typically have a higher premium compared to Medicare Advantage, but have fewer copays, less deductible. You can sign up for a Medicare Advantage with 0 premium per month, however, have much larger deductibles and might have higher copays. Prescription drugs, choosing a supplement, you would choose a separate Part D program, often included in the Medicare Advantage. So I would say, as we approach Medicare's open enrollment, to get a free cost and coverage review, look at your different options and review it just based on your personal needs, whether or not certain things are important, which I will review here in a minute. Now, I often get asked when I'm connecting with clients about what's the difference between an insurance broker and a captive agent. So here's one thing I feel that makes a big difference when you're researching plans or trying to decide if you're going to switch, is brokers typically represent a lot of different companies in their states. Sometimes brokers also have licenses in other states. Brokers have the capability to access a lot of different Medicare platforms and a lot of different Medicare companies to give you a really good cost and coverage review, as opposed to working with a captive agents that might represent one or two. Might not always be in your best interest, not that I'm saying they're good, but again, the brokers have a much larger network and many more resources than a captive agents would have. So as far as things to consider when reviewing your coverage or choosing the right coverage, do you need or do you want additional benefits? So as I've mentioned previously, a lot of the Medicare Advantage programs do offer some vision benefits, some dental benefits, some things that you're not going to find in original Medicare. So the one thing that we've seen, at least going into next year, is a lot of companies offering more vision and dental, also offering hearing aid benefits, which is really crucial because hearing aids are rather expensive. A lot of them have max limits, but still offer more benefits than paying just out of your pocket or cash. Would you like to keep your doctor or specialist? If you're in a Medicare Advantage program right now and you want to keep your doctor, it's really important to figure out if your doctor actually will accept Medicare assignment. Otherwise, you'll have to stay within that network or find a plan that the doctor accepts. One thing that we've seen in the past few years is a lot of doctors aren't accepting Medicare assignment. They're not going to be billing Medicare first. They only want to take Medicare Advantage programs. So it's really important, if you've been with your doctor a very long time and you're really loyal and you don't want to switch, to find a plan that your doctor actually takes. Do you travel or do you have homes in other states? So this is also important. Now, when you enroll, whatever address Social Security has on file for you, they're going to count as your primary residence unless you tell them otherwise. So I would always recommend having a plan, if you do have a Medicare Advantage program or a Part D program, to have it based on your zip code in your primary state. So if you have questions with that, let me know. Usually that's about 6 months on your primary residence is what they look for. How do you feel about your copays and your deductibles? As a general rule of thumb, the lower you pay on a monthly basis, the higher your deductibles are going to be on the back end. And then also on the alternative, the higher you pay on per month, the lower your deductibles are going to be on the back end. So honestly, it just depends on how you want to manage your expenses. Would you prefer to have peace of mind and have a higher premium knowing that you don't have to manage to the deductible, or vice versa? It's just your personal preference. What will your medications cost under each plan? I would do an accurate cost comparison between having a supplement and a prescription coverage, and then a Medicare Advantage, because again, some medications are more expensive under certain plans.
Vanessa, I got a question for you.
Yes.
So we have a couple of snowbirds
Mm-hmm.
On the call, or semi-snowbirds. They might come up to, back and forth from Phoenix to Seattle area. What are there things they need to do extra research on, if they're going to be outside of their personal residence for as many as 2 or 3 months at a time? Is there anything they need to be mindful of in terms of what kind of plan they select?
If they have a supplement, because they travel much better than Medicare Advantage programs are typically by zip code. If you have a supplement, the only thing that I would say pay attention to would be the prescription coverage. So let's say they're based in Washington, because I'm in Washington. If they're based in Washington, I would just call whatever company, if they're using, let's say, Humana, call Humana and just make sure that they have a network pharmacy that they can use in the same plan until they get home. And a lot of them do. In fact, a lot of the Medicare Advantage programs are also expanding coverage for snowbirds. So I can't go over too many specifics, but if you have a question on whether or not, on the expansion, but a lot of the Medicare Advantage programs, I feel, have paid attention to the snowbirds and really what they need and what they're looking for, and really expanding their network specifically to the state of Arizona.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Your enrollment period. So there's a few different enrollment periods we see quite frequently, and that would be your initial enrollment period. So this would be at the age of 65 or when you need Part B, and that could be typically at a retirement. Medicare will give you 3 months before, the month of, and 3 months after to make changes or complete your enrollment. Now, your general election, if for some reason you miss your initial enrollment period, Medicare will allow you to re-enroll, but not until January the following year, and more than likely assess penalties. Your coverage then would kick in on the 1st of July. So there's a little bit of a waiting period if for some reason you do miss your initial enrollment. Now, the big one that most people are being bombarded with starting now is Medicare's big open enrollment period, which starts on the 15th and ends on December 7th. One thing to keep in mind is that you can change as much as you want to during that time, but whatever plan you end up with when the open enrollment closes is the one you're going to keep beginning January 1st of 2021. The annual enrollment period will also allow you to switch from a Medicare Advantage to a Medicare Supplement as long as you can answer health questions, unless it's your initial enrollment period. So the one thing I do want to communicate is a lot of individuals say, well, I can't be declined coverage. The Affordable Care Act rules, in which everybody is insurable, doesn't apply to Medicare and switching coverages. So just keep that in mind. If you do have a question on whether or not you can qualify for a supplement, it's pretty easy. It's just a list of health questions. That's something we can review at a later time. Now, you can start researching and reviewing plans now. However, agents and companies are not allowed to take any enrollment applications at least until the 15th when it opens. But most of the new plan information is available for research now, especially on Medicare's website. So the big updates and changes, a lot of the Medicare Advantage programs have dropped their premiums quite a bit. You're going to see more zero premium plans this year than I think we have in prior years. Now, for folks that are diabetic, we're seeing a lot of relief for insulin. So insulin, specifically Lantus, Humalog, those were really big in getting you and hitting you in the coverage gap rather quickly throughout the year. So we're finally seeing a lot of relief on that. They're going to knock that down to a 30-day supply for $35. So very helpful and just lessening the prescription costs overall. Some of the plans are also expanding to Arizona, providing more snowbird coverage. So I know that we just talked about that. Now, Medicare also is going to give you 12 acupuncture visits, in 90 days to treat chronic lower back pain. So this is something new. Normally, Medicare would not cover this, so that's new to all Medicare coverage. Now, with the severe weather affecting certain parts of the U.S., you'll find you'll have a special election period if your primary residence is in Florida or Texas. And furthermore, your Medicare.gov, not only are they allowing you to search plan, premium, and 5-star ratings, they're also now going to implement provider ratings, which I think is helpful, especially if you're new to Medicare, turning 65 and need to find a new doctor. You might find that that's handy because they'll have some additional resources and contact information on Medicare's website. Now I'm going to go ahead and kind of review the COVID-19 impacts here in a minute. But if you are curious on Medicare's challenges or updates on COVID-19 or regarding COVID-19, you can actually visit Medicare's website and enroll, and they'll automatically send you emails and updates with that information. All right, a big one. Before I get into how COVID is affecting Medicare, you're seeing a whole lot of scamming going on related to COVID-19 and Medicare. So I really just wanted to spend a few minutes on this slide because it happens all the time. The scammers out there are becoming very tech savvy and trying a lot of manipulation techniques just to steal your Medicare information. Please keep in mind that Medicare and Social Security, they're never going to call you. They will always send you letters in the mail, and that is their method of correspondence. They're not going to call. If someone does call and say, I'm calling for Medicare, you can either hang up or you can ask them additional questions to your discretion. Now, if they're an actual licensed agent, you can actually ask them questions regarding their license. So I would say if they're truly a scammer, they'll probably just hang up. So that's one thing to keep in mind to pay attention to. A lot of people don't understand that Social Security doesn't call, so they kind of feed right into it. And I would just say, just hang up the phone. Now, what to avoid, things to watch out for in addition to those phone calls would be the unapproved free testing information. What they're doing is taking your personal information and selling it off. So just be wary of that. Most of the testing information is going to come from the government directly, or even your plan will update you. So watch out for letters or phone calls. Just make sure that they identify themselves or that the letters actually have your company or plan information logo on it. Fake stimulus checks, free virus tracking apps, and then of course, unlicensed or overseas agent. If the person on the other line is calling and they're a true professional, they will have no issues giving you their licensing information. One thing you'll find once you start asking questions, they'll just hang up. So if you would like to report them, of course you can do so through Medicare. And especially if you're getting the same phone calls, I can't promise that Medicare is going to do anything about it, or there's a program out there that's going to help alleviate that, but that's what we're seeing a lot of. So just be wary of those things. So big impacts of COVID-19 and what Medicare has done in response is they've modified a lot of the Medicare provisions that were previously in place just to help alleviate some concerns that beneficiaries were having and to make sure that everyone on Medicare is fully protected. And here are some of the things that they are doing. They're, no co-payments for COVID-19 testing. They're allowing refill limit or waiving refill limits on certain prescriptions, reimbursing for Part D out of network prescriptions, waiving prior authorizations, telehealth services. A lot of the Medicare Advantage programs are freezing either the copay or reducing the copay substantially from $20 to $5 if you participate and do a telehealth seminar with your doctor or provider. Very helpful. Hospitals are now providing care at alternative care sites, and there's quite a bit of information on Medicare paying for vaccine for COVID-19. So just keep that in mind. I mean, there's a lot of resources and a lot of support if you are diagnosed with the virus in response to, the plan that you have, it's going to be covered. If you do have questions, again, there is a Medicare consumer helpline for things to report, or if you have questions related to the COVID-19 virus. I did include here that no one really is going to cover home care or long-term care. Even if you're diagnosed with COVID-19, the care aspect of your Medicare coverage won't be covered. So this is where a lot of planning comes in. Although we like to think even if you were diagnosed that your care at home would be, and it's unfortunately not. There's nothing published that says that Medicare would cover you for COVID-19 diagnosis for the long-term care need. Let me see, and then I would just say, again, just take the necessary precautions, of course, social distance and protect yourself that way. And furthermore, they are providing additional flexibility. So nothing is set in stone. I know a lot of the COVID-19 has impacted a lot of different industries, so they're just trying to remain as flexible as possible. A couple additional resources and a few questions that I've had more recently is how does the health savings account, HSA, affect Medicare? Typically, once you're on Medicare, you can't contribute to a health savings account, but you more than likely can use the money to help pay for the cost associated with your Medicare coverage. There is a Medicare free mobile app on what's covered that you can download if you have questions, if you have upcoming surgeries. You also can visit medicare.gov, which is right here. That's essentially what it looks like. You can put in any service. Most of the information that I covered here was also there, also in your Medicare and You handbook, which if you have not received, you will receive in the month of November. I want to encourage you to read your summary of benefits. That's where you're going to find your big plan changes if you decide not to change plans. Also, if you do decide to change plans, the agent or broker that you're working with is required from a compliance standpoint to provide a summary of benefits so that you have that handy. Fortunately, a lot of people don't review that. And I, again, would encourage you to, because once you start to get sick, that's where a lot of the frustration and confusion comes in, because you think you're covered for certain services and you're actually not. So I would just recommend that at least on an annual basis or once semi-annually is to review your cost and coverage benefits. And that should be in your plan materials that are sent to you. Now, your information on long-term care will be located on page 52 of your Medicare handbook. And we have yet to see any published response whether or not they're going to increase the Part B premiums or what the IRMA looks like for 2021. We've conflicting reports on what that's going to be, but for the sake of just making sure I was compliant, they're not yet published on any Medicare related material, so I left those off entirely. Most of the time they'll be published by the beginning of November, mid-November if you have questions. Here are your official government resources. So one thing to note, if you are working with an agency, an agent, or a broker, they should be referencing all of these official government resources. So I understand that the Medicare and You handbook is rather boring to read. However, it is really good just as a backup. Really good to reference in the event that you have a quick question, or even Medicare's website is really good. There is a lot of information there. And then Social Security's website is mainly for the enrollment process and finding the forms you need to make sure that your Medicare is in alignment. Looks like that is all I had to cover. Do I have any specific questions or anything that you guys might find over the course of the presentation that you wanted to discuss further?
I have a quick one before anyone else jumps in. So obviously there's a lot of stuff that you covered. There's a lot of different plans. And then there's people out there like you. So versus someone spending all of their time diving into all of this, what's the difference of someone finding this all on their own, working with you? Does it cost more to have an agent help them? Yes. So yeah, what would be, obviously your wealth of information, you clearly know your stuff. Why would someone work with you versus try to do this on their own?
Well, I would say it's free. So I'm a big proponent of offering service. I like to go places just personally and have people to talk to. So I think that makes a big difference, because if you try to call Medicare or Social Security, it's going to be it's going to take you hours. I always respond to phone calls and emails right away. That's just one thing I've always valued. The big difference between working with me and finding out on your own is I have access to a lot of insider information ahead of time. So when the plans do launch maybe a special service, I could just pull on my client base and say, here's what you can expect. You don't always get that information. And I don't cost anything, to be quite honest. How agents are paid and how brokers are paid is we are paid by the plan that you choose to enroll. So it really doesn't make much of a difference going with Humana, with this person or this person. I would really cater that to the service that you're going to get behind the scenes. Because the other frustration that we see out here in the field with clients is they just want somebody to talk to. I know I get that way when I'm doing things. I don't want to push the numbers. I don't want to wait on hold for an hour. I just want somebody to talk to. I want you to know me, and I want you to be able to answer my question. So that would be the big difference.
Well, so just to reiterate that, so what if you were on your own picking the Humana plan versus something else, versus having you help them identify the best plan, and maybe it's the same plan they would have chosen, but you did a bunch of research, helped them figure out the best solution for them. There's no additional cost. It's basically whether or not an agent at all in that process.
Exactly. It's not going to cost you anything to have somebody kind of be your advocate and fight on your behalf. And a lot of times if the plan itself is not responding to you, because I'm an agent and I'm contracted, I can just send them a quick email and just really kind of fight and get that question answered.
Cool.
We do have a couple questions that have come in on chat.
I don't know if I can see the chat.
Nope, I'll go ahead and read it to you. So the first one's from Bonnie. Why did they do away with Plan F? If I have it now, I can continue with it, correct?
Yes. So your Plan F, your full coverage plan, not available anymore, but you are grandfathered in. And I believe they did away with that because they did not want any plans paying for the Part B deductible of $198. So they did away with both the high deductible F and the traditional F plan for that reason. I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, there's no government reports that really explained it. I just feel like, honestly, that they just didn't want the insurance companies paying for that aspect of the government. It could be, and just speculation, that might be raised in the future. I'm not sure.
All right, we have another question from Sue. Is there underwriting involved if you are trying to switch from supplement to Advantage? And yes. I understand Advantage allows those with ESRD.
Yes, you're exactly right. So that's new for this year, is that if you do have that that specific illness that you can enroll in Medicare Advantage. Previously was not the case. If you move from a Medicare Advantage and you're outside your guaranteed enrollment period, then yes, there is underwriting and there'll be a list of health questions. That is correct.
That's all we have on chat so far.
Hey, Vanessa, how many different plans and companies do you represent?
Oh, I would say the state of Washington, 20, and then Arizona, Idaho, and a couple other states. So essentially what happens is when you're a broker, you do a non-resident license to do all the health insurance. So the company, as my primary Washington, Humana, let's say for an example, Humana has one here and I have a health license there, I can just transfer my license to Humana. So I represent a lot of companies with the exception of ones that service the very low income demographic. So a lot. And sometimes it's hard to keep track of all of them and the pre-licensing requirements. So there's a lot of them out there.
I guess the good news about that is, we have clients on here from multiple states. And so if they have questions, if they want to work with you, likely no issue in terms of your ability to work with them.
No, not at all. Our Medicare platforms that we use as brokers, it's all based on zip code. So as long as the license is in force, I can pull up any plan available in that zip code. Uh-oh, she's muted. Any other questions? I kind of feel like they had a question, but maybe not.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, again, we appreciate everybody jumping on this evening. Vanessa, thank you very much for your information. I know it might seem like a dry topic to some, but I do know clients of ours have a lot of questions on this, and it's in a very stressful process at times to go through. So I appreciate your insights and also look forward to again, we'll you've got Vanessa's information here. We're going to be posting the video up to the website probably by Friday, and if approved from our compliance side, we'll also have the slides up and available as well, so you guys can go back through all of that information. But obviously would encourage you, this is a pretty complicated world, and definitely would recommend, if you've got individual questions and you want someone to go and do that review for you to see if your plan matches up with your needs, definitely would encourage you to work with Vanessa. Again, we've had a couple clients already work with Vanessa in the last couple of months after meeting her, and they've been really happy with the information she's provided and support her team provides. So with that, we'll look forward to seeing you all very soon. I'm sure we'll be looking forward to doing another happy hour on another topic probably before the end of the year, probably after the elections, and see how that all goes and what that all will mean. So with that, I hope you guys all have a great evening, and we'll look forward to talking with you soon.